Hello, I'm Harry Bucknall. Thank you for downloading this podcast from the Royal Navy and Royal Marines charity.
It was a cold winter's night, there were stars in the sky. Oh, it's like remembering a dream. I cast my memory back, and here's what I see.
It's all aboard for Christmas as we talk about life at sea during the festive season. We learn that when it comes to keeping in touch, the letter still holds its own, and we uncover a little-known legend in the submarine service that Santa has an underwater helper, a lobster, to deliver presents beneath the waves. But to open, we gathered up members of the ship's company from HMS Brocklesby, the Hunt-class mine countermeasures vessel, to reminisce about Christmas alongside in Bahrain last December. I hope you enjoy the programme. What are your first thoughts about Christmas at sea?
I would say it's very similar to Christmas at home, except instead of having, your brothers or sisters, your mum and dad near you, or your kids even, you've got such a large family around you. And it could be as simple as your messmates. So for us on Brocklesby, all the junior rates share one accommodation space. Or it could be on a bigger ship where you've got, a couple hundred of other 100 people around you. I'll probably say it's really similar to home, with its own little traditions and quirks and fun as you'd expect, but I think that you still got your friends around you.
So Jack, where were you when you were at sea?
I was in Bahrain actually. We were alongside, but alongside in Bahrain.
And how was that in Bahrain, being in an hour of sea?
It was kind of sucked being away from loved ones and family, but I think we made the best of it. And we made it a really good Christmas.
How did you make the best of it? What is the best of a Navy Christmas?
Well, we started the day off. Those who were duty, we had a nice drink to start the day. We all had Christmas dinner together, everyone on board. We did Secret Santa, and we just made a good, fun day of it.
What did you get for Secret Santa?
Nothing that interesting, if I remember right. A lot of the gifts weren't the nicest gifts. You're kind of trying to see each other off a little bit.
Is there any naffy? Is there a naffy to buy?
There's no naffy on board, so we're on the Hunts. They're quite small ships. Again, I think that adds to the family sort of side of Christmas on board, because it's such a small, tight knit crew we're on. So.
And Jamie, now you're the chef. You've got to produce Christmas dinner. So what's the secret? Do you do stir up Sunday for the Christmas pudding and all that stuff?
So this year, the year we done, actually all the killix took charge. So there was 8 killix on board, and overall I overseen the safety side of it, making sure everything was fine and done all the ordering of food. It was all the the LDs, the leading divers, the leading mine warfares. They all come in my small galley, and throughout the day we were just making food.
Did they trash all these amateurs coming into your galley? Did they trash the place and say, "Where's all my salt gone? What about my herbs and all that stuff?"
No, they were actually quite good. Actually, to be fair to them, when I was speaking to them, just making sure that they were doing everything safe and correct as well, following food standards, making sure they don't give raw food out, but no, to be fair, as a team they work really well, and the food I gotta give in, you might see it on Twitter, or known as X now, of when we were on Chinnenfold, we were on the boat deck. We've got a big table on the boat deck where we had a fort of us all, and the wardroom served, so all the killix are in the galley. The wardroom in the Navy, traditional, the wardroom will serve the junior rates, scrum. So we've done that on the boat deck, and I gotta give in, the lads done well with cooking the scrum.
Can I just now you're the chef, okay, on board, but I asked the lads, how is his cooking?
Ooh.
You want to stop the recording?
Best thing we had on board.
So did you join the Navy to become a chef, or were you just told that's a good thing to do?
No, I was a chef on the outside, and I wanted to join in. My uncle was a major in the army, spoke to him about the better roles of either Army, RAF or Navy for chefing, and he said Navy is better for chefing.
What's your speciality then?
I love all different types of foods, but I do like Italian. I think Italian food is really basic, but it can be done right. Like traditional carbonara using pancetta. So when we local purchase, like in Bahrain, instead of in the UK we have a core range price list where we're only allowed certain stuff. In Bahrain, although I still got a budget to stick to, I can order a bit better foods.
Do you have a carol service on board?
We didn't. We had some live music on though. We had a couple of musicians on board.
Who are the ship's musicians?
They're not with the crew anymore.
He's not with us anymore, and
He's moved on to a different
They both
career, just to
left,
Let's speak to Kamal. Chris, you've got to run the ship as a ship, and you've got to keep discipline during Christmas and so on. What are the problems for a Kamal side during deployment when you've got a Christmas at sea or the celebration and you've got the lads away? What are the problems that you face trying to keep the ship's morale up and all that stuff?
Everyone's missing home, and there's no two ways about that. Everyone misses home whilst they're deployed to a greater or lesser extent, and it's during special times, family birthdays, family events, and Christmas probably most of all, that sense of absence gets amplified. But I think the way you get around it is exactly as Cam has said, is you get your naval family around you, and that's why we tend to go quite big on the traditions. Things like the Christmas dinner that Bo's described, the wardroom serving the rest of the ship's company, everyone pitching in the galley, or one mess deciding they're going to take charge of it and pitching in the galley, and it's by keeping those traditions up and giving some people something to look forward to kind of distract from the fact that they're missing home. And that's not to say that people aren't going to phone home on the day of or FaceTime home or whatever. Of course they are, but equally if we were to not do the things that we do as a service and as a Navy in order to give people that focus for the day, I think there's a risk that people would allow themselves to dip, and clearly that's not where we want to be. Because it doesn't do the individuals any good, but actually collectively as ship's companies, and in all the ships I've been in, when I've been deployed at Christmas a few times, I've never had a bad deployed Christmas, because I think it's something we as a service do really well, because it's important to make sure that people look after each other.
Now the ship's company is not large enough to have a padre, so that makes you the padre. How does that make you feel?
So I would never describe myself as the padre, and actually one of the great things about being in Bahrain is you do have access to the padre who is based out there. But yeah, it's true. The divisional system we have, which obviously stands all the way from the commanding officer down, in terms of every group of sailors has got a divisional officer, and within that structure you'll have divisional senior aides, divisional leading hand. So basically a whole rank range structure to whom you can go for support, and at times such as Christmas that gets even more important, and that can be anything from just a friendly word in the mess of are you okay, all the way up to anything we can do to try and pick up an individual or give them some extra provision to maybe make an extra phone call or two home, all the way up to all the way through that system, and myself included, if people need to come and knock on and say, so I'm struggling with this deployed period for reasons A, B, C, the system on board, and that's on board every warship, not just sort of in our crew in Brockelsby. Every ship's got that structure in place, even if you don't have a padre. And the wonders of modern communication, certainly it's a lot different to when I joined. But it's a lot easier now to access sort of remote services and remote support services now than perhaps it ever was, which is great, because it means that if somebody needs to speak to a welfare team or a padre or similar support functions, it's a lot easier to make that happen now than perhaps it ever was.
But now there are times obviously when you're on operations, but actually you get into digital close down and you can't use your phones and stuff like that. How does that affect you when you're out in there and your loved ones at home can't talk to you, can't send you WhatsApps? How's that all?
I think everyone understands that is part and parcel of what you quote unquote sign up for. Alluding to what the CEO and Cameron said there, just sticking with that family ethos, everyone understands their job, who they are, what they are, and where they are, and everyone on board, especially even though it's my first ship, the smaller crew really amplifies how well and diligent people are at their jobs. So when it comes to times of people having to shut down their phones or this, that and the other, or you have to hand them in and don't tell no one anything, we know that we're comfortable to deal with that environment and that situation, and it's just something that you do get on with. But as Sia was saying, the systems that we have in place to allow people to open up and express how they're feeling, it's good. And yeah, it's just something that you deal with. So yeah, for me, it's not.
I think as well is obviously we go to sea for periods of time as well, like a week or 2 weeks, where you wouldn't have service on your phone anyway. So I think people back home knowing that is what you're doing and that is normal, it makes it a bit more understandable, really.
Carl, how do you explain that to your family when you join the Navy that this would happen? Because there are times that they'll worry more than you will worry because you know where you're at.
No.
But when you're out of communications, how do you then explain that to your family? What do you say to them then?
So I would just say to my mum or dad, I would say, I've got to shut my phone down. Obviously, I won't be able to disclose information, but just know I'll be okay. And I'll speak to you as soon as I can. My mum understands, so obviously it's not nice, but I think she sort of understands that it's part of the job, really.
Yeah, ultimately it's things you can't control. So you only focus on what you can control, and that is your reaction to stuff like that. And that's really all it is. Control what you can and focus on that, and everything else is just the decision of other people. And you've got your uppers around you, and your families, they know the score, they do know the score, as I'm sure you may have experienced yourself. So yeah, I think having experienced multiple times of being at sea and not having service, and also having to put your phones away, having experienced it firsthand, it's not too much different to just being at sea and not having service anyway.
It can be quite refreshing getting rid of your phone in this day and age, because when you're without your phone, like so. My girlfriend probably disagree with me there, but
So, but then we talk about phones, we talk about the immediacy of communication all the time. But what about things like blueies? Do you send blueies off? Do you still write letters?
I do. My mum, my dad was in the Navy, and that's how they communicated back in the day, and that's how their relationship kind of started. And as kind of almost like a little throwback tradition, I send my mum and my fiance blueies, not every week or every day, but to just express, a happy message or happy birthday, congrats on this, something simple like miss you, and I won't tell them that I've sent it, so it's a nice surprise when it comes to the letterbox. And I think it genuinely changes their attitude towards me being away or us being away, because it just reminds them that yes, although we're not there with them, we are still thinking of them, and I think that'll be the same for every sailor in the fleet. Is you're not there, but you're never far gone. You know what I mean?
It probably helps more creating a bit more an intimate relationship as well with the loved ones you have that are far away, because although everything's just at a press of a button now, maybe just it adds that just nice little intimate touch, which not everyone enjoys a FaceTime or knows how to FaceTime, depending on who you speak to back home. So yeah. And
of course, in these days of excessive postal charges, a bluey is still free, isn't it? That's the key thing about it. Presumably, also, Father Christmas must make an arrival at some point during this great festivities. Who plays Father Christmas on board?
That was one of the old Stokers, Donny. We need a new Santa now, though, because he's gone.
I think you picked the most Santa-like person, don't you? Regardless of rank or rate.
But Cameron, it could be. I mean, you could be you next time. You could bring your cards right.
I'm jolly and Mary. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yes, definitely.
But Jamie, it couldn't be you, could it? Because you're on the galley.
Yeah, so it depends. It could be, because my lads I got 2 lads could be in the galley instead, so I could do the rounds. Because I'll leave them with the responsibility, but overall I'll have the responsibility of it, but I can nip back and forth.
Being Father Christmas. Yeah.
I could be Father Christmas.
I can be everywhere, can I?
I can, yeah. Imagine.
I do decorate the accommodation. Does it get covered in tinsel and all sorts of baubles and stuff? Do you have Christmas trees in there? You have a Christmas tree?
Tree, didn't we? Or something.
A 2-foot tree.
There wasn't much space in there, to be fair, for the festive time. I think we did have a bit of tinsel around.
A bit. Doesn't sound. It didn't get a whole hog then, eh? Did you have a car?
It's quite a small ship.
No holly above all paintings and.
No, not really.
We had people,
enough.
people dressed up and stuff, dressed as elves. We had Santa, like you said.
So you got the stoker was the Santa.
Yeah, we had a few.
And he had some elves, did he?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
How many elves did he have?
Oh, I think there's 2 or 3 of them. If I remember
Any
right.
Christmas fairies? Any Christmas fairies?
No Christmas fairies. Maybe next year. Though.
No,
You probably make me do a fairy actually.
What's all that about? I'm not attached.
George, I wouldn't. But sometimes, when far from home, unforeseen situations can arise that fall between the cracks. When suddenly a pressing need is plain for all to see, but the unerring dot and comma of MOD regulation and Admiralty law cannot satisfactorily resolve the matter. Which is when the RNRMC can offer swift resolution. Lieutenant Commander Chris Fox, Commanding Officer of HMS Brocklesby. I know you've had compassion cases on board ship, and sometimes it's difficult. How has the RNRMC helped you in specific instances?
So we had an instance during the last few months where one of our sailors from an overseas country, a close family member, had to travel to have some potentially fairly significant medical procedures done. There wasn't any provision for funding to get him there through normal service means, although I was clearly more than happy to approve the compassionate time. And the RNRMC were able to step in and offer a grant to cover the cost of his travel so that he had the option to go and be by the side of his family should it have been required.
In comparison to life on the waves, the manner by which the families and crews of the submarine service manage long periods apart beneath the waves is very different. Operational requirement the priority, seasons of the year give way to patrol schedules. Christmas clashes with the summer solstice, and crew replacement can shatter the calm of leave. Sophie describes how being the wife of a submariner requires mettle, determination, and a good sense of humour. Your husband, who we can't name because obviously it's the silent service, is on board one of His Majesty's submarines and is about to go away on deployment at some point in the next few weeks, I think. Is that fair to say?
The nature of what he does means we sort of have for that to change. So if somebody on the other boat becomes ill, or he's ready to go now. So we're...
Family life is always constantly on the edge, I imagine, until such time as he's gone away. How is that for you?
It's difficult for all of us. I mean, you read any sort of with the children, you read any sort of child development book, and children need stability. And sometimes that feels like the last thing we can provide them, because they're constantly on their toes with, well, Daddy might be back this weekend, he might not be back. He might be at your nativity, he might not be. So it definitely keeps them on our toes. We have to be very flexible to everything, and every wedding invitation we accept always comes to the caveat of one of us will be there. 2 of us could be there.
And then once he's away, you effectively become a single mother again.
Yeah, and it's very different. There are parts of that I'm very glad I don't have to deal with. So I have an end date at some point in the future where I will have a co-parent again. But for those months, I don't have my closest friend and ally to confide with. It's months of silence. Sometimes you get a letter to say, actually, they're coming back a bit early. So you're in this limbo period for a very long time, and it can get incredibly lonely.
And although you're up at Faslane and the naval family is all around you, do people gather around and make sure that you're not sort of left alone, as it were, and you've got someone you can talk to, like a friend or a neighbour next door on the patch? Well, it must be quite a close-knit community, I imagine.
So we're 500 miles away from, well, I don't know exactly, but we're hundreds of miles away from Faslane. And that means that no one around us knows about submarines. And it means that there are some difficult conversations with teachers and friends who will, say really well-meaning things like, will you be able to talk to Daddy on the phone? And you have to explain over and over again, please don't say that to my children, because they can't talk to their father. He won't be back soon. He might be a very long time. And when you're 2 years old or 4 years old or 6 years old, that's a good proportion of your life that your dad disappears for, and it's difficult for them to understand.
But when he comes back, presumably there are great celebrations. How do you celebrate when he comes back?
So the last time he came back, I had a very small child, and so I work with the HMS Audacious charity, and we're funding toys called Huggable Heroes that are cuddly toys printed with a picture of their parents. So my toddler had grown up with this representation of their dad, so she did remember what he looked like when he came back. And we have some wonderful pictures and videos sat on the side of the Clyde, her waving at this submarine, sort of going quite quickly through to the dock again. And it is magical, and it does get very exciting, and you see all of these other people who've been sort of in the same boat as you. He's done for months as well. So it is an enormous celebration, a huge relief. And it's a very highly charged time. And then, when you've left a 11-month-old baby and you come back to an 18-month-old toddler who can suddenly talk in full sentences and is running around and climbing things, that's beautiful and wonderful and exciting to be home. But it's also hard because you feel a sense of loss that you've missed out on a period of time you can't get back.
I imagine that presumably that 24 hours while he's decompressing, as it were, it's probably not a bad thing because he must smell a bit when he comes off the submarine.
Yeah, there are lots of stories of partners and mothers and sisters hosing down their loved one as they before they're allowed in the house. There is a bit of that. And yeah, I was half grateful that he had time to have a proper shower, because they don't always get time for that on the boat, and could put on some clean clothes before we met him in a sort of lay-by near the base. It's a very romantic thing to do, and it is wonderful to have that reunion at the end of a very long, hard time for all of us.
You mentioned HMS Audacious, the Valkyries, who, as we speak, on the 12th of December, left the Canaries and are on their 3,000-mile row across the Atlantic. That's Alex, Izzy, Nick, Ali, and Lily May. Tell us about the challenge ahead of them and what the plans are for their target to raise money for the RNRMC, Royal Naval Marines Charity, and mental health.
So it's a campaign and a journey that I know relatively well. So my husband has done that twice. So it's over a month that they will be at sea, just the four of them. Very isolated and alone, although thankfully the technology has got slightly better since the first team did the crossing in 2019. And there's a mix this year of submariners and surface ships as well. But both of those have extremely long times away from home in the middle of oceans. But for Izzy especially, he's our submariner on board. It's a nice change for her to be above the sea rather than below it.
Now, Sophie, it's important to talk about Christmas. Your husband is currently at home for this Christmas, but there have been times when presumably you've celebrated Christmas at the weirdest times of year. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we are hoping that my husband will be home this year, although we've had the usual phone calls of, well, it might be this day, it might be this other day. And we've had plenty of times where we've expected him home and he hasn't made it, and vice versa when we're not expecting him and suddenly he turns up on Christmas Eve. But we are hoping to have him this year. We have often celebrated it a few days early, and I think especially having children, we're lucky in that we can tell lots of different stories. So I remember one year being really concerned that the children would be devastated not to have their dad on Christmas Day, but actually their main concern was how Father Christmas was going to get the presents onto the submarine. And so very quickly we've created this family myth of the Christmas lobster, who makes sure that they collect the presents from Father Christmas on the side of the shore, and then it takes the presents down to them. So we have lots of discussions about the practicalities of how you might get presents on board if you're a lobster, and I have to find lobster themed gifts every year to leave them as submariner children. So it adds to the magic, and we're lucky in a way that they don't know any differently. So it's very normal for them to have Christmas a week before, and we make a big celebration out of it. So they know that Christmas can happen anytime. It's not just that one day of the year.
I love the story of the Christmas lobster. You think we're going to start a tradition here?
Yeah, they it surprises them when other people haven't heard of it. So I'm sure it will spread very quickly soon now that they're making more and more friends. But yeah, it certainly helps because they've had a number of Christmases without him.
But for all the separation and for all the hardship you go through, you and your girls must be very proud of your husband and all he does for the Royal Navy.
Yeah, we are. We are. The girls have been lucky enough to have him come into school and to talk to their schoolmates, which is really helpful for them because it helps the children in their class understand why, you know, their Christmases look a bit different, why they might be finding things a bit difficult at Easter or Father's Day. And him walking into their school hall dressed in his uniform is a huge source of pride for both the girls, and he's become quickly a bit of a celebrity in our landlocked village that we have here. So a huge sense of pride, and you know, we think about him a lot when he's away, both, you know, just missing him terribly, but also, you know, the contribution that he's making to the security of our country is something that we also talk about as a family a lot. So that helps.
For the last 16 years, Warrant Officer Class 1 Claire Robson has been a social worker for the Royal Navy, resolving the complex challenges that long periods of separation and uncertainty can impose on the lives of service personnel, their dependents, the knock-on effect for operational capability. Married to a former Master-at-Arms who recently retired from the Royal Navy after 30 years' service. With 2 stepsons in the Royal Marines and her own son a Navy dependent, it is probably fair to say that Claire is no stranger to family life in the armed forces.
Been a social worker in the Royal Navy for the last 16 years. And being married to a Master-at-Arms, you can imagine the debates and conversations that we have quite regularly in our household with a difference of opinion. But I think that's quite refreshing.
But a life of a Navy family.
Yep.
How would you describe that in summary?
It's an amazing uniqueness in there is an unspoken understanding across the whole family and pride for what we all do really for the service. And I think that chimes throughout the point of joining to the point of probably end of life, dare I say it, in that it's a lifelong experience and pride that we hold as being part of the armed forces, and contributing to that. And sometimes the contribution to that is we have to be away at Christmas. And there is an unspoken understanding that that's what we have to do, and we adjust.
Now you've got
okay.
So you've got in the family you've got a Navy veteran as a husband. You've got 2 stepsons who are Royal Marines, and then you've got a Navy dependent who of course is your child.
Yeah.
And when one of you is away at Christmas, how is Christmas at home?
Different, I would say. You try to make it as amazing as it could be, but there's always as I call it, an empty chair. So Christmas really can happen in November, it can happen in September, and it can happen in January, February time. And I think there's an element of difference for some of our children within school settings, because Christmas is a huge celebration, whether you're in a faith school, whether you're in a state school, whether you're in a private school. And there is just this unspoken difference for our service children and our service families when there is a part of that that's missing at Christmas time. If you're together, it's amazing. The adventures that we have and the time that we spend together is sometimes more of a priority and more exciting than, because we know that we might not be together again next Christmas. So it's the time that you give to your families during this period, whether you're at home or whether you're away, that will make the difference for the people, be that left at home or the ones that are deployed. And again, it comes back to the support of the family around us, but also the support of the people that we serve with. Let's be honest, Christmas can be a challenging time, an exciting time and a challenging time. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that that's the case. Not everybody looks forward to Christmas. But it's knowing that even if somebody needs to pick up the phone, that an oppo will be there, a friend, a professional. Even if it's Samaritans, if it's through RNRMC, if it's through the officer watches to get hold of the Royal Navy family and people support over Christmas, or it's just to pick up the phone and speak to somebody, there's always somebody at the end of either a telephone, the Royal Navy Forum chat box, that is there to be able to support that person.
You've been away, obviously, at sea. What's your most memorable Christmas at sea you've been through?
It was during Occipian. We were down off Mombasa. We'd been extended because unfortunately the 9/11 happened. So we were supposed to be back in the UK on the 17th of December, and we had a clear lower deck to say, we're not going back. They made the most out of Christmas, and we had the period at sea. But everybody in the ship, and I know people use the poem, we're all in the same boat, we absolutely are. So people who are a little bit finding it difficult will be supported by the people in the mess deck. And I think that's the best thing about the Navy, is the camaraderie and comradeship that goes throughout the Navy, and how we support each other, good, bad or indifferent times, to be able to get through whatever we're experiencing.
I think it's very easy for people to forget that although when you're at sea, the ship can become an incredibly claustrophobic place, especially when you close down operations, can't it?
It can be a very claustrophobic place, but it can also be I feel quite at home on a ship, which people find a little bit strange, especially when you do families at sea, or families days, and everybody, I couldn't live on here for 6 months. Actually, it's quite comforting, really, to know that your friends and oppos are around you. And let's be honest, we don't get on with everybody that we work with, but it's about how we engage with those people and pull together as a team when we need to.
It's part of a ship's company when it's in commission is a very specialised and a very, very close-knit community, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And during that commission, it feels like you are part of it, more like a very close-knit unit, aren't you? Very much part of the family.
Yeah, and our families that are at home, we ensure, and we work really hard to ensure that they feel part of that community as well, and that's really important. I always say that we recruit the individual, but we retain the family, because it's really key that our families feel part of our journey.
My thanks to Lieutenant Commander Chris Fox and members of the crew from HMS Brocklesby, Sophie and W1 Claire Robson for their help in making this programme. If you enjoyed the podcast and would like to learn more about the work of the Royal Navy and Royal Marines Charity, or make a donation, then please visit rnrmc.org.uk. To follow the progress of HMS Audacious Valkyries and support the team of 4 women from the Royal Navy rowing the Atlantic to raise funds for mental health and well-being, please visit hmsaudacious.com, which is spelt O-A-R. But before we sign off, I'd like to come back to the Royal Navy family, which is made up not only of serving personnel and their dependents, but of course the many veterans who valiantly served our country, defending our shores, interests abroad, and the liberty we enjoy today. 80 years ago, the battle for northwest Europe raged on the borders of Holland and Germany, a fight which began in June when the Royal Navy assembled the largest armada in history to invade Normandy. So from me, Harry Bucknall, thank you for listening, but the last word goes to 98-year-old Navy veteran Ken Benbow from Garstang in Lancashire, who served on HMS Crane at D-Day.
Hello, this is Ken Benbow, a D-Day veteran, wishing all of the Royal Naval family a very happy Christmas and a healthy New Year.
Footprints in the Snow was written by Lieutenant Commander Phil Clark and performed with fellow musically minded aviators from the Fleet Air Arm in Little Red Ambulance. We Wish You Merry Christmas from the open top deck of a London bus driving through the West End was performed by the band of His Majesty's Royal Marines.
On behalf of the bands of His Majesty's Royal Marines, we would like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Series editors were Alice Farrow and Shannon Cooper, with the studio editing by Michael Silianu. This has been a Gamekeeper production for the Royal Navy and Royal Marines Charity.